Then lastly, we should be able to describe the organization of the human body. So anatomy is basically the study of the human body in terms of structure. So it's the study of the structure of the human body in relation to other parts that constitute the human body. So we also look at the relation or the relationships of the different parts of the human body to one another. When we look at the structures of the different parts of the body in relation to their function, then we're basically looking at what we call functional anatomy. Whereas the study of how the body works is called physiology, and in this context, we are studying how the body works in a normal human being. So basically, physiology describes how cells actually operate. So looking at anatomy, we have different ways we can categorize anatomy, and different ways in which we can actually study anatomy. If we use our naked eyes to describe different body parts, then that is gross anatomy, or we call that macroscopic anatomy. But if we use a microscope, then that is microscopic anatomy. So when studying anatomy, we can decide to look at regions, one region at a go. So you can perhaps start studying the head, the neck, the thorax, the abdomen, then the pelvis. If we do that, then we are actually studying anatomy that we call regional anatomy. But if we look at body systems, for example, the digestive system, the respiratory system, and then the endocrine system and others, then that is, we are looking at anatomy that is systemic in nature. And then clinical anatomy is basically we are relating the structure of the human body in relation to the practice of medicine, and we are actually incorporating aspects of clinical implications of deviations of anatomical structures. So we can basically say that the human body is made up of the head, neck, then the trunk, which consists of the thorax, abdomen, pelvis, and the vertebral column, or the vertebral region, or basically the back, and then the limbs, the upper and then the lower limbs. However, we can actually say that the human body is organized from the smaller unit, for example, from the cells. When we have a group of cells performing a particular function, it becomes tissue, and then when you have a group of tissues performing a similar function, you have organs, and then the same thing happens when we have organs performing similar function, then we have the systems. So that is the basic organization of the human body. In a more complex level, we can say that the organization of the human body starts from the chemical level, where you have atoms and molecules combining, forming complex compounds, which actually drive life, or which actually results into metabolic processes, existence of metabolic processes in the cells. And then now we can also still go back to our earlier organization of the cell level, the tissue level, organ level, system level, now a fully existing organism which is able to carry out metabolic processes. So this is what we have just been describing. That so if you have atoms combined, they form molecules, and then the molecules, when they combine, they form complex compounds, and these compounds now form one um, a great deal of what is inside the cells. So the cells now can be able to use these complex compounds or molecules to be able to perform certain functions. And then eventually, for example, in this case, we're talking about the smooth muscles, and then the 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 the, 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 the cells of the smooth muscles working together to form what you call the tissue, and then these tissues combine to form a system which is basically able to carry out a number of different functions within the body. So the organ system is now when you have all systems working together such that the organism or the human can exist. So the smallest unit of a living organism is what called cells. And these cells come in different shapes. They are adapted to different functions. So they are not basically similar. They have unique properties that make them um, very specialized for performance of specific functions. For example, the reproductive cells like the ovum of the sperm or the nerve cell. Now, when we have a group of cells working together, performing a similar function, then that is what we call a tissue. Tissues are basically grouped into four. Uh, so we have four types of tissues. We have epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and then the nervous tissue. And we shall look at each of these in our later presentations. So when you have several tissues working together to perform a special function, then we have what we call an organ. So we have different organs within the body, the lungs, the heart, the uterus, and many others. And then when you have the number of organs performing a function which is a little bit more complex, then we form multiple systems. We have a number of systems: skeletal system, muscular system, reproductive system, urinary system, cardiovascular system, a lymphatic system, endocrine system, nervous system, digestive system, and then the reproductive system. So like we earlier on said, we can study anatomy using different approaches, macroscopic and then macroscopic. Microscopic is when you use the microscope, or that can actually be termed as histology. We can also use the approach of looking at how structures of the human body are formed, and that is what we call embryology or developmental anatomy. We looked at this earlier on. So in anatomy, we use certain words to be able to describe structures of the body. This is very important because it allows uniform communication that provides orientation when you're describing different parts of the body. So we have many terminologies that we shall look at. The terminology is related to position, terminology is related to anatomical planes, terminology is related to movement, terminology is related to laterality, and then terminology is related to comparison or relationship. So we start with what you call anatomical position. This is like one consistent position. Like it's used as a reference point that now every time you're describing an anatomical part, you can use the anatomical position as a reference point. So anatomical position is when you have a person standing upright with the face facing now and facing forward, and with the palms facing forward too, and the legs close together. That's so the descriptions, the images that you see, these are what you call anatomical positions. And then we have what you call anatomical planes. These are the imaginary planes that are used to describe sections of the body. So we have different planes. We have the medial plane, which basically cuts the body into two equal parts. And then we have the sagittal plane. It's